Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a quick review of this young man's video titled Young Men Are Turning Their Backs on Women in Record Numbers. All right, let's get into it and see what it's about.
A lot of young guys are not getting married, they're not having kids, they're not even dating, they're not having girlfriends, and you're not going to see this on the news, you're not going to see this on Tucker Carlson or CNN or anything like that, but it's a massive trend. It's kind of taken over the West, and I think America specifically, young guys are kind of turning their backs on women. And a lot of people don't really understand, like, why is this happening? I want to talk about my experience.
That's interesting too, that it seems to be a phenomenon predominantly happening in the U.S. I think there's other countries that are going through something similar, but it seems to be particularly the U.S.
And also one of my friends' experiences. One of my best friends, Luke, he's a really great dude, but he's a shorter guy and he's always kind of struggled to date. He's never had a girlfriend. And I was hanging out with him yesterday and he'd been talking to this girl. I was kind of excited for him, but he said that she kind of like ghosted him, and he told me he's pretty much done. Like, we were just eating and he was like, dude, I think I'm done like trying to find a girl. Like, if something fell in my lap, I would definitely consider it, but I'm done just going over and over again and getting rejected over and over again. And he also talked about how his parents are divorced, and he's like, even if I do end up being able to date a girl and end up getting married one day, I think that, the fact that I could get divorced and get half my stuff taken, his mom, like, there was some infidelity there, and he's like, dude, like, even if I do end up being able to attract a girl, there's always that opportunity for her to kind of ruin my life.
And that's one of the things that I see a lot of the videos out there on YouTube are not talking about. That there's a lot of videos out there that are being produced by young women that are talking about, I can't find a good man, this and that and the other. Where are all the good men? In most of the videos, I think I've seen, with the exception of maybe two, maybe a couple, no one talks about, they're not talking about the core issue as to why men are walking away, at least from what I have heard and from what I have seen. And that is the giant elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, which is family court. Men just don't want to be destroyed by that anymore. Not to have to put in all that effort, and maybe even years and years of their lives for it to all go poof up in smoke. So we'll see what he has to say. Let's continue.
I'm just not really sure if that's worth like going through all the struggle of getting rejected, trying, getting your heart broken over and over and over again, and then eventually like you still don't have that guarantee that a woman's going to respect the marriage vows and is going to continue to like be loyal to you. It's a really big problem. I think that Luke is just like one of millions of guys. And I think that social media, dating apps, they've made like this relationship thing not what it's supposed to be. Like our parents' generation and older generations, I think they kind of naturally had a different view on humans because they didn't see humans as like a number, as just like a swipe or anything, or they didn't really have like a clout check. Like obviously,
That is a very good point. They didn't see humans as a number, as a swipe left or right, as a cloud check. Like as today we have the internet, you can just instantly go online and check someone's cloud, check their background, check their networking. Um, Everything today seems to be find out who the person is on paper, or in other words, online, before you find out who the actual person is.
there were famous people and rich people back in the 1900s and stuff, but you didn't have this like level of clout and social status that Instagram or TikTok or some of these things kind of have made normalized. I think that girls have kind of had a lot of their like standards just kind of cooked by like social media. And I think when you combine a lot of the things that we have in society today, a general sense of nihilism, like the death of religion, And you've got a lot of people that don't really see like dating as something that is only for marriage. Like, you don't have people really dating to settle down. You have a lot of girls just dating like the hottest, most high status dudes they can get, and they're not really concerned about like, you know, trying to stay loyal to one guy. They're just kind of boosting up their social status. And I think that this is kind of the reason why a lot of young guys are kind of dropping out of the game. They think that it's almost an unfair game. Like Luke, you know, he sees the potential for divorce. He knows about the painful reality of like divorce laws and custody laws because he experienced it with his parents. He's faced rejection, he's faced heartbreak, and he's just kind of like, you know, well, I can just enjoy playing video games, hanging out with my friends, doing what I like.
And that's what most men are doing. I think the divorce statistics are, it's like 70 or 75%, somewhere in there, of marriages end in divorce. And the divorce is usually followed by the woman. And I have heard a lot of people say that it is because the state has incentivized women to get a divorce because they're going to win cash and prizes. You guys tell me your opinions on this. You know, I know there's a lot of men out there. I think in order for a successful relationship to happen, you have to have a man that is mature enough to know how to properly lead a woman. And we're talking about in a committed relationship and then on into family. You have to have a man that knows how to lead his woman in a mature, responsible way. And you have to have a woman that is willing to follow the man's lead, because there cannot be two leaders. That doesn't work. It's gonna butt heads. Just like in a tribe, you can't have two chiefs. You can't have two CEOs. You can't have two presidents. You can't. You know, there can only be one person that is ultimately doing the leading. So let's continue, see what else he has to say.
Like to do, trying to get a career, like make some money. But it almost seems like he feels just discouraged to a point where he's kind of given up. And it's a sad reality because we're not meant to be alone as young guys. We're meant to be hanging out, dating, being romantic and physical with young women. It's just kind of how we're biologically programmed. It's how God made us, or at least that's what I believe. I'm a Christian, and I think that God kind of made the feminine and masculine energy to kind of match each other, to have like almost something to lean on. Like, they're complementary in the right setting. But
and he makes some very good points here. Now, to clarify, as a Christian man, you're not supposed to be romantic in the sense of having physical intimacy unless you're married, and you're not supposed to be physical unless you're married, in other words. But yes, he brings up some very good points. There is a lot of there are very important factors that have been lost, very important traditional factors that create a balance. And once you lose that balance, well, we see what's happening out there now. So it kind of speaks for itself.
Society now has made a lot of men more feminine, and they've made women more masculine. And when you combine that also with the whole idea of just like gender roles being destroyed, traditional values, religion kind of being destroyed, and then you also pile on top of that like social media, the status check, dating apps, where there's more guys on dating apps than girls. Like, I think it's like 70% of people on dating apps are men.
Speaking of dating apps, I actually had this matchmaker tell me one time that she contacted me and she said, "Hey, I have this woman that I think you might be interested in. I think she was a psychiatrist or something like that. And she says, you know, she has her PhD and she's just really super busy, so she doesn't have time to date." And she proceeds to tell me that, you know, this woman's super busy. She has a 4-year-old son and she doesn't have time for her son, so she had to have her parents step in to help her take care of her son, and she doesn't have time to date. She works 7 days a week, etc., and just proceeds to tell me how this woman's life is just completely full and she has no time for anything. So then I asked her, so when would she have time for me?
And also, men don't really have like the monogamy standard that a lot of our parents kind of expected. Some girls don't even really care if a guy has like other girls that he's hanging out with, as long as he's a very attractive, like successful, high status guy. They're more willing to just try to get with that guy than like a guy that's just slightly less attractive that will settle down and want a marriage with them. A lot of girls are not.
This is true. This is 100% true. Now, with that said, there are good women out there that genuinely want a good man, that are looking for a good-hearted man, man with a good heart, and they're not just interested in money and materialism. But unfortunately, I think, generally speaking, most women in the West are looking for, a lifestyle that provides luxury in the sense of materialism and things like that. But basically, women are looking for resources to have a good life. And I think society has made it now to where most men, for a multitude of reasons, cannot even come close to being able to earn enough money to provide for this woman or a woman, let alone children and everything else. So let's see what else this young man has to say.
Not really concerned about having kids, being in a monogamous relationship. They just want to kind of hoe around and hang out with like a Chad type of guy. Even if they can't get all of him, like they'd rather take some of that guy than all of a guy who's kind of below him on the dating scales, if you use like the 1 through 10 scales. Hypergamy and polygamy are kind of what's taking over. And I think it's been like a slow burn, but we're getting to a point where the statistics are really starting to show this, not just in like the birth rate decline, but also just, I think Pew Research does a lot of dating type like polls and stuff, and a ton of guys are saying like they're not even looking for dates, they're not interested in dating. They've kind of turned their back on the game. They're like, okay, I work 40 hours a week, I got to go to the gym, I only have a certain amount of free time. I don't really want to spend that free time working so hard just to get rejected and set up to fail.
And I see this happening with the young generation of guys that just, they're, most of the young guys I know, and I know a pretty good amount of young men, they're not interested in relationships, and they're kind of sort of interested in dating, but they're very apprehensive about it. So yeah, it's kind of sad to see those things happening.
I'm gonna go fishing, I'm gonna play video games, I'm gonna do what I want to do, I'm gonna enjoy.
And a lot of young men are so busy working that they don't even have time for personal hobbies. So there's another factor there too.
Enjoy my life, spend time in nature, reading, watching TV, hanging out with my friends, drinking, maybe smoking. They don't really want to spend that little bit of free time that we get trying to play a losing game. No, I think that it's really sad. I think it's a tough situation.
It is. It's a very tough situation for a large majority of men and women. There's been so many things done that have happened throughout the course of the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that have caused men and women to just drift apart.
And I also
Oops. Looks like I hit the wrong button there.
I want to encourage guys, if you feel like you're a lot like Luke, and this is what I told Luke, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this in the comments, but I don't think giving up is the right option. I think that you just have to kind of shift like your priorities. Now, Luke's not a religious guy. I think that he's not really going to take the advice, but I know that for me at least, I'm a Christian guy, and I want a Christian woman. And what Christianity kind of teaches, and I mean it demands of its followers, is monogamy and marriage if you're going to settle down. Like you can.
And a lot of men too, you guys tell me what you think about this. A lot of men are going overseas, at least that's what I hear. A lot of men are going overseas to places like the Philippines and other places in Southeast Asia to look for what they consider are more traditional conservative women. Um, so if you're a woman out there watching this or a man out there watching this, you tell me what you think in the comments down below.
Stay single as a guy. You can kind of go monk mode, and like First Corinthians, Paul talks about this. Like, it's not a sin to not get married, but if you do want to be sexually active, if you want to have a family, you're supposed to do that in the marriage covenant under God. Two flesh become one and have a family. And I also think that Christian women in general will respect that vow at least a lot more than secular women. Like, a woman who's actually serious about her faith, she's in her church, like, involved, she has a history of taking sex seriously, hopefully she's a virgin or has like one or two bodies, she's going to be much more likely to stay committed to marriage, to have a healthy view on what love is. I think a lot of secular women have been kind of brain rotted by TikTok, by propaganda and podcasts, sex
And I can tell you the women that I have met that are like he described, they, maybe they've been with one or two guys and they really value commitment and the traditional values like he's speaking of. Those women have been the best to get along with. They've been just a joy to be around, just for a multitude of reasons. And I think it's sad that because men and women were created to complement each other, companionship, all the good things, right? And so many people are missing out on all of those things because of the things that we are experiencing in our society.
in the city, call her daddy, all that stuff. It's kind of skewed what their realistic like vision of a relationship looks like. But a woman that's really involved in religion, not just Christianity, but I also think like other religions can be a lot more.
And what I wanted to say there too is that true Christianity is not a religion. We get, I think the world has gotten very comfortable with labeling everything a religion. One thing that I have learned is that if you have a true relationship with God in Christ, that is a relationship, and religion is actually defined as man-made doctrine. So that's just a side note for you guys out there. Just keep that in mind, and look up some of the wonderful testimonies of people that have gone through really hard times. They were in a really bad place, perhaps even doing some really evil things, and they had an encounter with Jesus. I've seen people say, "Oh, I explored every other religion, and for some reason Jesus kept drawing me in." And there's a reason for that, but that's a whole nother video, whole nother conversation. But let's get back into it.
Healthy than secular liberal society. They kind of understand that marriage is not like a walk in the park. It's not going to be an easy thing. You're not always going to feel lovey-dovey. What it really is sacrifice, a mutual respect, shared values, and creating an environment to have kids. And that's why it is really important. Like, I wouldn't tell a guy, don't date a girl unless she has like a good
Sacrifice and mutual respect. That is huge. Huge. As Trump would say, so huge. It's going to be huge. But seriously, folks, that respect is huge. You've got to respect each other genuinely, not on a level where it's just superficial, or it's just, oh, I'm respecting the other person just so they'll be nice to me. You've got to really, when you're in that, you've got to really put yourself in the other person's shoes, particularly when there's conflict, right? So
good family. But if a girl comes from like a healthy family environment where her parents are still together and they haven't separated, she understands that they're not always
very important right there. Very important. A woman that comes from a family where the parents are still together, the statistics show that. That's really important. And another thing too is that, you can say that numbers don't lie, which that's true. Numbers don't lie. There are exceptions to that. Like, for example, when if the person that's doing the numbers is if this light is too, this light's too bright, but anyway, especially when the person that's doing the numbers could be, maybe they're not telling the truth. Maybe they're manipulating the numbers. But for the most part, it's safe to say, generally speaking, that numbers don't lie. If you go out there and look at the stats, you'll see some some really crazy stuff.
Is in this like deep lovey-dovey phase. They just created the life together, and they've kind of stuck through it. They stayed committed, and it's rewarded them with a life where now they can actually have a family. They can have someone to do life with. Now, I think that's a lot better than trying to go through life solo, because life's really difficult. I don't want to go through all this alone. My parents are getting older. They're going to die.
And that's why God created woman to be man's companion. And I tell you what, folks, it can be a really beautiful relationship between a man and a woman. Women are beautiful, and both men and women have their purpose. And when men fall into the role, when they're living it out as to what God designed them to be, and when women are living themselves out as God's daughter and what He designed them to be, it's a beautiful thing, folks. It really is. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship.
One day, I've already had a family member pass away. There's going to be deep loneliness in your 40s and 50s if you don't have a family or you don't have like a wife, because in your 20s, like Luke, he can hang out with us. Like, he hangs out with us a lot. I'm hanging out with him tonight. You can do a lot of fun stuff to fill up your time, but if I get married, which I want to, and have kids, I'm not going to be able to kick it with him in my 30s and 40s nearly as much.
That's right,
and
right.
all of his friends are going to start kind of settling down, hanging out on the weekends, going fishing, like going to the gym together. That stuff's going to become few and far between for a lot of those guys. So if you're really considering this, I would really try to think about your life from like a top-down view. Assume that you're going to live to 80 years old. If you're 20 right now, do you want to spend the 60 remaining years you have like alone and single? Be honest with yourself. Like, there's some guys that are willing to do that, and if you're a Christian guy and you want to try to spread the word and really dive into your faith and your relationship with God, if that's what you feel like you're called to do, go for it. But if you're like a secular guy and you're just kind of like fed up with the game, kind of like Luke, I wouldn't recommend giving up. I would recommend trying to shift your priorities. I would also recommend, of course, I'm a Christian. This is a
I can tell you, for the Christians out there, as he's mentioning Christians, if you truly understand the way God wants you to do things, and I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about true relationship with God and Jesus. If you really understand what that is, and you have that, and you follow that, and you walk that walk, your life will turn out much different than as if you do things the world's way. Life's not going to be perfect. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be suffering for one reason or another. But if you do things the world's way and you're living for materialism, money, sex, drugs, whatever, all the things of the world, your life will turn into a train wreck. Maybe not right away, but ultimately your life will turn into a train wreck. So that's just some food for thought there, guys.
Shameless plug, but you should probably look into the church, look into theology, read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, read the Bible, listen to the Bible while you work out, become a Christian and look into that, because that's kind of the last good bet you have as a young guy to live a meaningful, a purposeful life in the West. And it is also like the truth. I truly believe in Christianity, and I think that it's going to change your life if you actually give it a decent, like, realistic chance to do that. Like, look into God, look into Christianity, figure out what you believe, and then it also kind of opens the door to have a much more healthy relationship. Christian women, like a woman who's actually serious about her faith and respecting the traditional values of Christianity, she's going to be a much better wife than a secular woman who's been propagandized by Call Her Daddy, Sex and the City, all these crappy love rom-com movies.
You guys remember that show, Sex and the City? You've got to be from a certain generation to remember that, but man, that was a really popular show for obvious reasons.
Where everybody's going buck wild fucking whoever, and then they have some $100,000 wedding and they live happily ever after. That's not the realistic situation that happens in those things. Like,
Yeah, not at all. Not even, that's total Hollywood right there.
in reality, that relationship goes downhill after a couple months. They start hating each other. The girl takes half the guy's assets in court. She fucks his best friend to get back at him, and then he's left miserable.
That's actually, that's a pretty accurate assessment.
So don't be that guy. But that's why I think a lot of young guys are turning their backs on women. I can't necessarily blame some of these guys, but I also would just say, like, my genuine piece of advice would be, maybe don't give up on the game. Maybe just change your strategy in a major way. Don't pursue liberal, secular women. But also don't give up on women as a whole. Pursue the wholesome, good, traditional women. And for me, that's going to be a Christian woman. And that's kind of my opinion. Like this video, share this video, comment down below, let me know what you think. Subscribe to this channel. I also made a fitness course. I lost 70 pounds. It's made my life a lot better. It's a really
Wow, 70 pounds? That's awesome, brother. Wow.
good course. Click that link, watch the video that's on the landing page. It might be for you, it might not be. If you don't like it, I'll give you your money back, but it kind of helps pay for the editors that I pay to edit these videos, and it's a really good course, and it will change your life if you're fat. If you're fat, or if you're really weak, click that link, buy the course, follow my Instagram, just read every single word in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. A lot of young guys are
Hey, that was awesome. That, I mean, people have to get paid too. Yeah, I mean, hey, check out his program. It sounds good to me. I mean, this young man lost 70 pounds. Wow, that's awesome, brother. God bless you, man. That's excellent video, sir. Excellent video. And I will put a link down below the video for anyone that wants to go view it for themselves. But excellent video, man. That was young men are turning their backs on women in record numbers. Great videos, sir. I appreciate your efforts, and I like how you had the box there in the window showing stats and different things. That was really cool. So we're gonna wrap it up. You guys have a super awesome, blessed night, and we will see you soon. Take care, everybody.
they're not getting married, they're not having kids, they're not even dating. They're not
Let's scroll over here. Let's see. Ah, there it is. I didn't have the button ready. All right, guys. Have a good night. And we will, or I will see you soon.